and Charles and
yes, and they had it and getting coffee and
yeah. But Elisa, I have a little question because on my laptop, the sound is not very good. I'm not sure whether you're speaking through the microphone or through the OL. If it is through the OL, perhaps you should move it a little closer to the speakers table.
Okay.
Straight, we can share perhaps, so we put it.
You can put it on there.
Yeah.
Is this better, Peter? No?
Yeah, I think it's better. I'm not sure how it will work for the other speakers then, right? But definitely this is already better, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So good morning, everyone. Since we have a hybrid event today and already some participants joining, so I'm sure there will be more who will come within the next few minutes, but we are also a bit under time pressures and some of our participants and speakers will have to leave a bit sharp. That's why I'm already starting the moderation of the event. So welcome to our DSO Entity event on the PCIs for DSOs, good practices and potential barriers. As I think most of you know, my name is Elisa Schenner. I work for DSO Entity and I have the pleasure to moderate the event today. But all the credits of this event certainly goes to Task Force FIN, Finance and Funding, which is basically our task force in DSO Entity that is dealing with these topics, and therefore also the coordinator, Fernando Dominguez, and his team, and all the members of the task force who have been very actively also working on the funding aspects and the funding topic. And this event is also not only organized by DSO Entity, but in very close cooperation with the other 4 DSO associations. And I'm very happy that we have also on the panel, Charles from EDSO, Carmen from Geodis here, and also from SEDEC. We have a representative as well as from Euroelectric. So it's a pleasure, I think, to see that also DSO associations are nicely working together when it comes to this important topic of funding, European funding, but also national funding for the DSOs. And before I give the floor immediately to our Secretary General, Peter Vermaat, maybe just some words regarding our program. So as you can see, we have basically 2 parts. The first part is a bit more theoretical. So to learn all the nitty-gritty, what is there to know about European funding. I'm very happy that we have excellent speakers from the European Commission, but also members that are really knowledgeable on European funding. And then after the coffee break, a second session, which should really be more workshop-like, where it's all about how can you apply for projects. And we will have a very good example of one project that was successful and that is also has been presented even in the Copenhagen Forum last week and highlighted the relevance of smart grid projects. And I would say, without further ado, Peter, I give you the floor for your welcoming remarks to this event.
Yeah, thank you, Elisa, for kicking off this webinar, and also a warm welcome from my side. And I hope you will enjoy the webinar that was organized through the activities of DSO Entity for knowledge sharing. And the topic for today, the PCIs, have a clear objective. The European Commission introduced the projects of common interest to stimulate innovation and to stimulate cooperation in order to accelerate energy transition. And now, under the activities of the Grid Action Plan, the European Commission has asked DSO Entity to promote PCIs in order to ensure that everybody has the right information and understanding on how the PCIs work, with the overriding objective that hopefully there will be more applications and more projects where DSOs can find funding resources and also innovations for further enhancing the energy transition. So that is why today we organized this webinar. The team has prepared a very inspiring program, I think, already introduced by Elisa. On the one hand, a bit more conceptual to make you acquainted to all the specifications and conditions of PCIs, but also inspiring to learn from projects that have been successfully nominated and already sometimes started as a PCI project. But as you know, DSO Entity always likes to cooperate with other stakeholders. So I would also like to thank DG Enner, who is participating in this webinar. And as already summarized also by Elisa, we welcome the cooperation with the 4 other DSO associations, SEDEC, Geode, EDSO, and Euroelectric. And with that, I wish you a very inspiring webinar, and I give it back to Elisa.
Thanks a lot, Peter. And I hope I don't have an echo. No, it's not the case. And then I would say we start with our panel here. And as I already said, we are very happy that from EDSO, the Secretary General, Charles Esser, is here today. EDSO has been working a lot on this topic of European funding, had also a very good study, as I think, in autumn that was presented, where are the challenges, what could be done better. And therefore, I'm very happy that you're going to give us the EDSO take on the funding situation, and I'll give you the floor, Charles. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alyssa, and thank you to the EU DSO entity for inviting me today. I'm very pleased to be here. I see we have on the screen, I'll just say next slide, but there's some animation, so some slides will, so I'll just say click perhaps if you go, when ready. Okay, so yes, indeed, well, you can go back a bit there, but I think, just a bit of background, of course, in the Grid Action Plan was published late last year, and of course there's the chapter 5 on giving access to finance, and in particular there's an action for the Commission, Action 9, which is identified tailored financing models, and this is. But for us, this is also an important topic, even as much as within the plan itself. It's assigned to the Commission, made us think about the topic as well. And so, of course, what I'll be doing today is presenting a paper that was published earlier this week on financing mechanisms for distribution system operators, which you can see there, and then. Just sort of the background, of course, in all this is that there's a huge investment challenge, which you can see the reference there is a Euroelectric report, at which you can see the size of the challenge there, 55 to 67 billion euros a year to achieve the energy transition, to place aging infrastructure. Particularly, we know that to achieve the energy transition, renewables will be connected even more. To the distribution grid from 70% to up to 80%. And so all that requires a large amount of funding to get us to where we need to go to achieve our decarbonization goals, our national energy and climate plans, and so forth. So this is a bit of the background. Next slide. So there's a sort of triangle, one can say, for DSOs to manage their financial stability amidst the energy transition, and one thing, of course, is that they can't exceed their debt ceiling. Another thing is that they need to deliver financial results and growth, and finally, they need to have the ability to pay out dividends. And so, if they can do all that, they stay healthy. But it's really they really need to be supported to make sure that they can continue to do that. In order to carry out the energy transition. I think that's really what needs to be understood, is that this is an essential triangle that needs to be kept in balance by DSOs. Next slide. Grants, we think grants can have an important role in this. They can provide financial relief and stability, because debt capacity limits can be reached, as we saw in previous slide. That debt capacity, we can't exceed the debt ceiling. So when that's the case, it's important that when conventional financing instruments will not address the funding challenge, the grants can provide crucial support in mitigating those financial costs and relieving debt capacity. They can also be a kind of a investment catalyst. Next, yeah. You can click, yeah, thanks. Some essential investments in grid modernization, expansion might not be financially feasible in the short term, but are needed in the long run. And so grants can make a difference in that case. Next, click, yeah. They can provide tariff relief. Grants can reallocate some of the costs away from grid tariffs. We know that the energy transition is there to benefit the broader society. And we know that we want to have a just transition. So taxpayer-funded grants, which we have to be honest, grants in the end are funded by taxpayers, can spread the costs around in a way that's more in accord with a just transition. Another point is awareness and acceptance. So grants can help raise awareness of the challenges and benefits, and society see that the importance of grid investments and how they benefit individual citizens as well as the society. And finally, it's really important to keep in mind that they can be benefit in terms of risk reduction. So lower risk provided by the use of grants, investments in higher value projects, technologies with higher technology readiness levels, which might be otherwise considered too risky, can be enabled. And this enables DSOs to really advance in terms of implementing technologies while minimizing financial risks. However, it's important to keep in mind, we go to the next slide, that regulatory treatment is fundamental. And so it's important that de-risking strategies by DSOs that aim to lower debt and reduce investment certainty can lead to reduced expenses while maintaining investment concerns. However, if the regulatory response is to lower the equity rate, this raises the benefit that was aimed at to begin with. And so it's important that regulatory treatment when grants are there is appropriate. It's also really, again, yeah. So the effectiveness of grants as investment incentives can also be compromised by regulators if they neutralize the assets in the regulatory asset base and tax these grants. So this basically undermines the purpose to begin with having these grants. So it's really important to think about if we're going to have grants, that the regulatory framework does not neutralize them. I think stepping back a little bit, it's also important to say that it's a generally enabling, supportive, and predictable regulatory framework is essential beyond the area of grants. We're going to still need network tariffs funding investments, and we need that framework that allows DSOs to make use of network tariffs that can broadly support their activities, and a regulatory framework that is stable and predictable, so they can secure financing. If it's unpredictable, of course, that actually increases the borrowing costs, can affect credit ratings and so forth. So this regulatory treatment behind all the ideas of financing is very important. Next slide. So it's also another topic is evolving loan models. And so our paper looks a bit at EIB loans, European Investment Bank loans, but we found that they often do not offer significantly better rates, and that they can be very restrictive, which reduce flexibility compared to other loans that DSOs might get. And if the rates are not better, but they're more restrictive, there's not really an incentive there for DSOs. It also can, via the loan structure, affect the holding company's credit rating. So we at EDSO, click again, we would recommend developing more adaptable loan structures that could include actually reductions that are granted when there are certain specified goals. We also think that the Recovery and Resilience Facility could involve enterprises as direct counterparts to the Commission to prevent enterprises from being subject to member states' priorities that could be suboptimal from an energy system perspective. So there are other ways to do it, and we think that should be looked into. If we go to the next slide. On blended finance, which means a combination of grants and loans, we think the terms are really important. And so the effectiveness of blended finance heavily depends on several factors, including portion of grants to loans and the terms, and of course the flexibility. And we'll talk a little bit about the flexibility just in the previous slide. So from our perspective, when there's blended finance, it's really essential that financial structures and terms are adapted to meet changing needs of the DSO effectively. It's also important to bring up tax reforms to enhance the EU's green competitiveness. We all have seen that in other parts of the world, such as in the United States with the Inflation Reduction Act or the large subsidies in China, that they have heavily subsidized green industry. So for us, forward-thinking approach towards taxation can catalyze the deployment of green infrastructure. We think perhaps that non-fundable tax credits could present a potent instrument for promoting green investments. This could reduce the amount of tax that DSOs owe. They can provide an incentive mechanism. DSOs, it should be noted that DSOs have an exemption under state aid guidelines as natural monopolies, allowing them to be tools in the green transition. And I think going back to the importance of regulatory treatment of grants, it's also important when we think about the tax treatment of grants. So if we tax grants, and these grants are designed to fund a specific amount of project finance, and then they're taxed, this is highly counterproductive. It negates the point of having the grant. And it also creates an issue in the sense that the amount of grant there to actually carry out the project is actually not the real amount that you need anymore after taxes. So we think that those are reforms to be looked at. And then finally, I'd like to just mention quickly government guarantees. They can provide an uplift in credit ratings. However, their impact on the financial ecosystem is mixed. And they don't really free up any additional debt capacity. And so while improving credit ratings, issuing new debt is generally positive, it has to be managed strategically to prevent adverse effects on the company's overall financial structure, particularly when you think about older debt issues. So those are some of the things that we thought about in terms of DSO funding. There are a couple of other things that I have in an annex on optimizing depreciation strategies and strategic bond issuance, though they're more for they're more regulatory and more than funding directly as a mechanism from external sources. So I'll leave those in the annex. And with that, I'll end my presentation. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Charles. And I think you gave us already really a holistic overview, looking into what really DSOs need and what is out there and what could be improved. So I think this is a good starting point for now, zooming in even a bit more towards also the topic we are specifically talking today, namely about the PCIs, which is, or within the 10E framework certainly, which is one opportunity DSOs can use when it comes to European funding. And thereby I would just ask maybe if there are any questions from the audience already for Charles or online. And I didn't mention it before. Again, a warm welcome to our participants online. If you have a question, please raise your hand or write it in the chat or the Q&A. We are flexible today. Maso is helping me in monitoring that we really get your questions and you will receive your answers. But if I don't see anything yet, and I know that Charles also has to leave us, unfortunately, for another appointment, I would say thank you one more time a lot, Charles, for your intervention and for being here. And then I would go over to Ricardo. I'm really happy that you took the time joining us for this really important topic for DSOs. And Ricardo, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the mastermind of the Grid Action Plan, as you are often quoted here in Brussels. And Ricardo is part of DPNR of Directorate C 4 on energy infrastructure and regional cooperation. And he is not only the mastermind of the Grid Action Plan, but also very knowledgeable on the PCI funding scheme. And therefore, I'm very happy that we will learn now from you all the nitty-gritty about the PCIs and also how to apply and what to do, I think. Yes, go.
Thank you, Elisa, and good morning, everybody. I found very interesting the paper you published. I read it personally, and I thought it gives the right context. Today, I'm going to present a bit more on one of the angles of the funding for PCIs. But to put it in perspective, indeed, we adopted last November the Grid Action Plan, which did something new, elevated at political level the importance of distribution grid. So now everybody understands it at the highest political level. Ministers have been talking about it. It has been in the council conclusion. So everybody realizes how important it is to have the grids, the distribution grids, ready for the challenges. And within this Grid Action Plan, we enumerated a couple of elements that we think are very important, from planning to regulatory incentives, anticipatory investments, and of course, funding is one of them. I'm going to focus solely on PCIs, so I will dive into that in a second. But just to mention that there are also other funding opportunities, and in fact, our Action 10 goes into that. There are cohesion, there are regional, there are modernization funds, there are other elements, other instruments that can be used, and frequently they are also easier in the sense that they don't require cross-border elements. They can be applied by smaller DSOs in a single manner. So just to keep that in mind, that we have a lot of instruments that should be utilized. And in fact, we're talking with the member states to raise awareness. We're talking to the managing authorities of these funds at national level. So just to keep in mind that there is more beyond what we are going to discuss today. And as Elisa was saying, so Ricardo René Williams, I work in C4, that is the unit responsible for infrastructure. I am responsible for distribution grids, policy coordination across DG ENER. And I used to be in charge of the smart grid PCIs. Now it's a colleague of mine who took over within the team. So with that, I think we can now move to the next slide. Thanks. So what are the PCIs? The PCIs are regulated flagship projects of common interest. So it's the European label that is given to very important projects that have a couple of benefits. I will explain those. But importantly, they have very, very high political awareness and interest. So a lot of support from the highest political level, which for rapid acceleration of project development, of modernization of the portfolio of the assets of a DSO, sometimes is required. Or at least is very helpful. So this TENI Trans-European Network for Electricity, for Energy, regulation was amended in 2022, 2 years ago. And we did that for a couple of reasons, notably the most important, to align it with the Green Deal. So to make it in line with the decarbonization and electrification objectives. That has a direct implication in the project selection, because now for all projects, which was not the case before, now for all projects, smart grids or not, it is mandatory that they have a strong angle on sustainability. That I will refer to later, but I think it's important to keep it in mind. Sustainability is a key requirement. There were new categories introduced. We have now offshore grids as a prominent category. It's more for the transmission level, but still much in line with the decarbonization and electrification needs. We have hydrogen also as a new category. We shifted away from natural gas, so except for some particularities, it's not anymore possible to be a PCI as a natural gas infrastructure project. Revise permitting and also regulatory provisions on how to help these projects of common interest, these PCIs, to be implemented. And for certain categories, especially at transmission level, we introduce a new status. So as there is project of common interest within the EU, there's also project of mutual interest with neighbors mostly of the EU, with their countries. The PCI status is given as implementing act of the Commission, a delegated act of the Commission, where a number of projects are established, put together in a document, and all of the categories go together. So whereas the selection goes at the beginning of the process, and I will explain it, in a category per category basis, so per smart grids, at the end it needs to make sense holistically for all of the categories. So those are electricity, which cover the traditional interconnectors, but also offshore, also radials in special particularities or particular conditions, storage, and smart grids. Today's discussion, hydrogen, electrolyzers, CO2 networks, and storage as well, and smart gas grids. Next slide, please. Focusing more on electricity now. So it's basically what I just said. Those are the three categories in electricity. So electricity, offshore, and smart grids. Within those categories, there are different groups that deal with the assessment and the selection of the relevant projects that are submitted for assessment, for consideration as to receive a PCI status. So there you have them on the screen. So there are different groups, different parts of Europe, normally regionally. The smart grids, the smart electricity grids is a so-called thematic area, meaning that is for the whole EU. It's not per region, and therefore there can be different setups. It's analyzed within a common thematic area group, so a single team. That is on the categories. Now, what is a PCI? The PCI, and I want to make that clear, the PCI is not funding. The PCI is a status, is a label that has access, enables access to a number of benefits, but is not a grant. The grant is one of the benefits, or the application for the grant is one of the benefits. So once you have this union list that I was saying, that is done every 2 years, so every November, every 2 years, we adopt a list with all of these PCIs and PMIs. And this list, then you have a confirmation at political level, at technical, via the assessment, at all levels that these projects are really, really good and are supported by the EU, by the European Union. These projects have, in the TENI regulation, they contain a number of provisions that aim to help them. So, for example, on permitting, there are, at the European level, there are certain streamlining and certain deadlines for other kind of projects that, for example, renewables, now in the revised Renewable Energy Directive. When it goes to grids, TENI is the one that today puts the most ambitious deadlines. Meaning that if to ensure that there is a rapid acceleration of the projects, if you have the status, you have a legal basis to say, hey, I need this permit at this time. This is prescribed by a regulation. So it doesn't need to be transcribed into national legislation because it's an EU regulation, the TENI, then is directly applicable to all EU member states. So by having the status, you already have certain rights. And this includes permitting. It also includes, for example, accelerated court procedures to the highest level of process that is allowed nationally, meaning if a stakeholder decides that disagrees with the project and wants to go to court, you have a right to streamline procedures there as well. Regulatory measures, meaning these projects frequently under the request of the promoters who are developing them. So let's say at DSO, for example, they may have access, but they need to request it to certain regulatory measures, regulatory incentives. An example that now is very much in the mouth of everybody, and we put it in the Grid Action Plan, is the anticipatory investments. That is one of the kind of instruments that once you have the PCI status, you can have, you can request, you can get access to, because it's part of the TENI as well. Then we go to financing, which is maybe what you are most interested of. And in terms of financing, well, I mentioned before, we have all the funding regimes outside of TENI that are very relevant for DSOs in general. When it comes to PCIs, to the TENI regulation, I think there are two elements that are very important to keep in mind. The first one is the EIB. The EIB supports very ambitious, very relevant projects for the sector in general, including on distribution level, and we are discussing with them in the investor dialogue in different setups to ensure that there is access in a relatively easy manner also for smaller DSOs, for example. But it's all, of course, it's not every time you're asking for EU funding or financing is always a lot of scrutiny, so it's a difficult process. But there is a lot of financing available, and the EIB always stresses that in every occasion we have. And they have there is, I think we put it in a footnote. Maybe you can check in the Grid Action Plan. They have dedicated. They look in particular to the PCI process projects. So once you have a PCI label, also financing by the EIB can be maybe easier to access. The other one is the CEF, the Connecting Europe Facility, and now is where it comes to funding. You need to have the PCI status in order to be eligible. It's not an automatic grant to be eligible to apply for funding. And then there are additional requirements that are needed there. Today, I'm going to focus on the PCI. So how to design a project that can become potentially a PCI and then may be eligible for the CEF granting. So we go to the next slide. The first thing is to understand what is a smart electricity grid, of course, in the scope of the CEF, of the TENI. So project of common interest, smart electricity grid project is what is shown in the slide now. This is the definition. It's a little bit shortened to make it visible, but first of all, very important, it enables cost-efficient integration and the active control of behavior of the actions of users. Why do I raise this? Because sometimes what we see by certain promoters is they forget a little bit this part. Maybe the focus is a lot on traditional distribution assets. Of course, are extremely important to ensure there is enough capacity in the system to integrate renewables, to integrate electromobility. That is essential, of course, but it needs to comply with the definition of what is a smart electricity grid. So it is about enabling active control, enabling active management of the system, visibility on what is happening in real time in the network. That is a smart grid. So not every distribution project will be a smart grid, and that is important. And we have seen certain weaknesses on some applications in that regard. It needs to be economically efficient for the system, and that frequently goes into trying to lower the losses of the network and try to integrate as much as possible renewables. That is in line also with the sustainability requirement I was saying before. Security of supply and safety, of course, also essential. And as I was saying, so it's not only to control, but also to monitor, to be aware of what's happening in the network, to see, to have sensors installed, to have real-time data that enables to see as a DSO what is happening, but also to communicate necessary actions in the network with the other system operators, perhaps, or with the network users. So this is the definition. Again, I want to stress that it's important to be aware of that because not every distribution project will be a smart grid. The next slide. Now, to apply, you need to meet, to apply for the PCI status, you need to meet two criteria. General criteria and specific. General are for all of the PCIs. Every candidate of every category I mentioned before, hydrogen, CO2 smart grids, etc., smart gas grids, all of them will need to meet these general criteria here on the screen. And notably, they are the necessary, they need to be necessary for at least one of the energy infrastructure priority corridors as defined in the Annex 1. So when it comes to smart grids, I put a summary of it here. It goes very much in line with the definition. So they need to integrate the behavior and action of the users and integrate large amounts of renewables or distributed energy sources, as well as demand response. And then there are a couple of examples, so electromobility, storage, things like that. So very much in line with what EU policy on energy is supporting right now. And of course, this is important that the project is aligned with that. So to integrate renewables, to manage the network actively, and to ensure flexibility is supported. The second of these general criteria is that the benefits of the project need to be bigger than the costs. Benefits from a policy perspective. So benefits understood as a CBA assessment that I will mention in the next slide. The last point is that we're talking about the Trans-European Network for Energy Regulation. So it's about cross-border. There is, as I was saying, there is a lot of other elements or instruments that support more local projects. Of course, at national level, even more than a European level. But here we are talking about PCI, so projects that can justify that they provide a value to the Union, to the European Union, and that they have relevance to other member states. So a small project that upgrades the network of a city will be very important, but it's not in the scope of, if it's only that, the scope, it will not be enough to get the PCI status. Normally, there needs to be an alignment of DSOs that exchange in different ways to ensure any sort of interoperability. It could be physical. So I don't know, giving more capacity to an interconnector through a smart grid project, or it could be virtual by helping DSOs in operating better in a network, but there needs to be a cross-border element. Otherwise, we are not talking about a PCI. And it also needs to meet those conditions in Annex 4, which are, well, it has to be about high voltage and medium voltage, meaning low voltage below the secondary substation will not be, is not part of the scope. It will be something else. So the smart meter of a house that is not going to be covered. You can apply, and this was one of the changes done when the TENI was revised in 2022, there can be a different combination of system operators applying. Before it used to be TSOs and DSOs need to apply together. Now there can be different combinations, all of them, only DSOs, a combination still. But it's important that if there is only DSOs, interoperability needs to be well demonstrated, meaning that it needs to be really well justified how it's not two separate projects that you glue together and you say we're a project. It needs to be something happening between those DSOs. So again, maybe on the physical or on the digital realm, but there needs to be something that says we are working together, in fact. And also they need to just satisfy certain criteria. So 2 out of those in the screen. So number of users, on consumption, on renewables, or on isolation, on reducing isolation from an energy perspective. Now on the specific criteria, which is on the next slide, this is particular to smart electricity grid PCIs, so or candidate PCIs. So we had the general ones, now the specific ones. Here there is a methodology, and you have it in a. I guess you will get the slides. You have it in the link there. Otherwise, it's online. There is a methodology basically translating what the TENI says in principles, in high-level messages on what is required into a methodology, well, a log document on how to demonstrate those benefits. So this relates to what I said before. The benefits need to outweigh the cost of the project, and the benefits are this in the screen here. The minimum requirement is sustainability. So that is a must for every project. There needs to be a demonstration of sustainability, which is done explicitly, is directly linked to renewable integration. So there needs to be an increase of renewables in the region that are enabled thanks to the smart electricity project and would not happen otherwise. So the smart electricity PCI needs to enable a higher uptake of renewables. That is a must. And then there are there are 4, but only 2 are required as minimum. So 2 out of 4. And this is another of the simplifications that TENI faced in 2022, because before all of them were required. So now 2 out of these 4 specific criteria need to be met. And it can focus more on security supply angle. So looking at network losses, looking at side-to-side fee, all these kind of elements, quality of the network. Market integration, so enabling flexibility, enabling new procurement systems or new business models, the network security, flexibility and quality of supply, and the smart sector integration. So more on the integration of electromobility, electrification of heating and cooling, this kind of things. So 2 out of those 4 need to be met, and how to justify them is explained in the methodology. Next slide. And this is now finishing. So it's about the process. We are now here on the very left. There is going to be a project submission, a candidate PCI project submission launch from September. Don't have a concrete date yet, but from September until the end of the year. So there is quite some time still to propose something. So half a year. And then we start with the evaluation. So we will have the assessments during the first half of next year with a public consultation. Acer will do a review as well, the regulators, and then that goes into 2 decision making, a technical and a high level with the ministries, with the governments to decide what is then the final list. Yeah, so I think the last slide, just to reiterate what I said. So the projects need to have a raison d'être. They need to have a reason why the DSOs go together and what challenge they're trying to solve. So it's not, the objective should, I always say this, the objective should not be to get EU funding and maximize EU funding, but to solve a problem. And then we have seen how very interesting projects, how they try to solve regional issues on quality of voltage control or reactive power, or things like that. And there is a regional problem that they try to solve. And that, of course, then becomes very interesting. The assets need to be consistent with the definition. It needs to be smart. It needs to ensure controllability of the network and of the network users. And the cross-border element is very important when talking about PCI. So that's it from me. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Ricardo. I think I've learned a lot in this short presentation. And I think for me, the 3 key takeaways are basically that I started my moderation already a bit flawed because I spoke about the PCI and EU funding. And indeed, I think one of the most important things is if you have the PCI status, you do not yet have the money, but several other advantages. And also the link you made then with the anticipatory investments, I think is something that is very interesting also for our task force FIN members who are working also on the anticipatory investments. And the second point, I believe also what you highlighted also at the end, there are already quite some clear criteria in the regulation. It is not just for EU funding, but it's really to do something smart, connected, and solve an issue that is also in a cross-border area. And also the third thought, I think that's really important is when you're referring to cross-border, it does not necessarily have to be physically, but certainly also if there's a virtual project, a virtual connection between 2 DSOs, not only necessarily with the TSO, then it is also something that is within the scope of this PCI. So it was for me really very good to have this so clear now laid out, and maybe certainly the floor is already open for questions, but from my side, maybe 1 or 2, I was wondering when you were saying, so now it's time also to apply. I think this is also why we make have the workshop today to see if we can motivate DSOs still to apply for PCI. And when looking at the application, so just a question, how, how, I didn't want to say cumbersome, but how large or how elaborative is it to apply? So just when thinking of, I don't know, pages or whatever. And the second question maybe regarding the chances for smart grid projects to be accepted at PCI, that to have a PCI status, if you could give us maybe a bit of a, historical insight, how good were the chances or not?
Yeah, on the latter. So again, these projects get a lot of political attention, and that is normally very good to ensure that the project is developed. The application, so I mean, on the chances, it's not historically has been rather positive. So most of the projects have received it. In fact, it's also true that we have seen in general, quite high quality projects. The project, so you can apply for the status even if the project is not fully mature yet. But that will be a requirement then when asking for CEF afterwards if you do. So of course you can get the status if you come up with something very ambitious. The boards or the CEOs of the companies have an agreement that certain kind of project needs to be developed. As long as it's sufficiently detailed, it could get the PCI status, but of course it needs to be rather mature if you go to the next stage in applying to CEF. So that is on that. We have a template which maybe we could circulate to you and you could spread, which we have circulated the other day to those who are who have expressed interest to be in this PCI process for smart grids. So the template, it could take a little bit to fill in, but again, it's true that maybe something that I have seen is that maybe for historical reasons, project promoters tend to try to demonstrate all of the benefits of all of the 5 specific criteria that I mentioned. That is not required. It's of course very welcome if it is the case, but what we expect is that it really fulfills certain objective that it might be focusing on some, but not all of the specific criteria. So I think it could be also a little bit faster than the experience of some of the current PCIs. And then I would think the most important and to start a project is get the higher level attention of the board, of the CEO, the management of the companies, and then the rest kind of unfolds in my role, what I've seen at least.
Thanks a lot. Any questions? Questions can also come from here, because I know that Kat and Amy are also very knowledgeable on these topics. I also look in the chat or online if there might be some while we are. Yes, Amy?
Thanks very much for your presentation. I actually really learned a lot, particularly about the status. I have a couple of questions. Perhaps one is a little bit more tricky than the other. You talk about innovation of the projects, and there are other EU funding schemes that also fund innovative smart grids projects like Innovation Fund. Perhaps also when you're trying to solve a problem, you could also say that Horizon Europe would also fund these types of projects. How do you see the fit of CEF Energy and the PCI projects? What makes it different? Is it this status? My second question regards the PCI list. As far as I understand it, you can actually continue to be on several lists. Is that quite typical? That if you're on PCI list 6, then you have to apply, or automatically, if it's not completed, go on to PCI list 7. Thank you.
Yeah. So the latter is maybe easier. Yes, you have to reapply, or you can. Normally, if you, because the projects mature and evolve over time, so normally until they are in, maybe after they have received CEF, if they apply, or after the commissioning is very advanced. So normally you do reapply to basically to maintain the other benefits. So on the permitting, on the other things, you need to re-get the status. I have not seen any project, any smart grid PCI project that does not regain the status. But of course, every assessment is completely different. So as per today's 10E regulation, it's not a grant that you will get it again. But if you have passed one, it's a good, it already has demonstrated a very good basis. So that's on the second. And on the innovation, well, the innovation is one of the, I didn't go into all of the details, but in the CBA methodology, it is one of the things that are looked at. For example, something that is covered in the template for submission is whether the DSOs have looked into integrating, for example, Horizon Europe developed technologies, or national, it doesn't need to be Horizon, of course, but innovative approaches. That is one of the criteria that is welcome, is valued. So it adds points, let's say, to the assessment. So it is encouraged, but it's not, it needs to fill all of the policy criteria. So it's not only about innovation, but it is very welcome and part of the points, let's say. And each of the funds, so on the other remark, each of the funds will have different criteria and different focus. Of course, Horizon Europe is mostly about innovation or research and development. So each of them will focus differently, but this is a smart grid. So we do what we call maybe a smart grid 20 years ago or 10 years ago is not the same as today. Things evolve. So we do expect applications to evolve as we see technology and technology evolving as well.
Thanks a lot. And we have also a question online from Markus Merkel, who is asking, is there a specific ruling with regard to PCI status for EC accession candidates? Specific question, I don't know.
Yes, yes, it's not allowed. So that refers to what I said before on the PMI status, so project of mutual interest for third countries. There's no distinction between accession and non-accession third countries. So you could get for certain categories interconnectors or hydrogen pipelines, for example, you could apply for PMI, but that is not eligible for PCIs. So sorry, for smart grids.
Thanks a lot. And if there's no further question, maybe just one last one from my side, but maybe it is obvious because you said if you have the PCI status, also when it comes to the EIB loans and other topics or other potential funding opportunities, it could be easier to receive it. Would you say this also goes for then, I don't know, cohesion funding or other funds if you then decide to apply for the innovation fund or something like this? Would you think that having a PCI status is helpful in general?
I think so. Of course, every fund and the EIB, the bank itself, will do its own assessment. That is, I don't want to mislead, but of course, it has demonstrated a very thorough technical analysis, and it has demonstrated political support by the ministries and by the EU. So that can only help in applying for financing or funding. I don't think it's only to the European Bank, but also I think development banks, national banks also welcome this kind of status. On the application to other funds, I am aware that some of the PCIs that are currently in the list for smart grids have applied to other funds, funding streams. So it is, of course, it is a possibility. Maybe just to highlight that then it becomes very important, and we pay a lot of attention to ensure there's no double funding. So that needs to be very, very well explained in the respective funding applications. But it has been the case in the last rounds.
Okay, sounds good. So in case even if one would not get the CEF funding, there's lots of opportunities and advantages to have the PCI status. Perfect. But then I would say many thanks. We will go even deeper into how to concretely apply in the afternoon. But for now, I would then go to our next speaker on the panel, who is Rickard from E.ON. He is working for the E.ON office here in Brussels, but already before coming, I think it's 6-7 years ago that you came to the European capital, but already before you were very much involved in energy policies, also already funding, but you correct me if I'm wrong. And you have lots of experience when it comes not only to the PCIs, but also to the other funding schemes that are out there at the European level. And therefore, I look very much forward to hearing from you a bit more holistically, what is out there in general, and also how does it link to the PCI and CEF funding, PCI, that is CEF funding.
Thank you very much, Elisa, for the introduction. Yeah, my name is Rickard Venetjoki, and I am working for E.ON Energy Networks Europe, and at the European Regulation Department. And I am specializing in financing for DSOs. I have been in Brussels looking into these topics for 7 years now. Yeah. But also when I was back in Sweden, I was actually also working in EU-funded projects from the horizon. Now it's more political, regulatory instead. I can also mention that in my role working in Brussels, I'm also working very closely with the different European associations, such as EDSO, the association which Charles Esser is heading. I am chairman of a working group that is also focusing on financing topics. And the paper that Charles presented, I have also, I'm aware of that. I've been involved in producing it. So Charles also asked me to, during the Q&A, if there are any questions, I will try to take those. First slide, repetition. I actually spoke to Ricardo before and I said, like, I guess I will tell some things that you already have told, but we agreed that it can't be stressed enough that PCI and CEF has to be separated. Sometimes you hear people that have been in contact with PCI and CEF for years, they still mix up these concepts. So I will try to take a bit of a different angle on it, but PCI is you only get through the first door. Then you become eligible to submit an application to CEF. So it's not a one-to-one. I will try to add some aspects which has not been mentioned yet. Ricardo mentioned that these are projects that are getting quite a lot of political attention. And that is somewhat also a bit of a barrier, because that makes it more difficult, I would say, for the smaller DSOs in Europe to actually be able to take on these kind of projects. They will have to have the more or less a signature from the ministers in 2 member states. And being a small DSO working locally, no direct connection to TSOs, to get the attention from the Ministry of Energy when we are having energy crisis and a war in Europe can be quite difficult. So I would say that it is PCI and CEF can be very rewarding, but it can also be very complicated and hard to reach for many DSOs. I will try to give you an overview of available programs that are not only PCI and CEF. Elisa, if you can take the next slide, please. Oh, sorry, it's Tommaso. I will start with the most popular program, I would say. End of last year, we conducted a member survey at EDSO, which was extended to the members of the DSO entity. And in this survey, the Horizon program came out as the most popular program. The Horizon is supporting basically R&D and I. It is bringing together many different kinds of stakeholders. It is allowing DSOs to test new technologies, such as, I would say, the foster TSO and DSO cooperation. Flexibility, for example, is a very common topic to work with. The Horizon has also a quite large budget, almost 100 billion per MFF. I don't know the exact figure, but there is a quite large chunk that is available for DSO and energy projects under the Horizon umbrella. Then we have a bit of a similar program. It is much smaller, the Clean Energy Transition Partnership. Also, pretty much the same concept as Horizon. We have the LIFE program. The LIFE program is quite a lot focusing on, let's say, biodiversity, and it can be quite suitable for grids as well. When we are building our grids, we are, let's say, intruding in nature, but this intrusion can also be an enabler. We are opening up the landscape, and while building these lines into the nature, we can also foster biodiversity. We can make sure we can do things that increases the number of insects. New kind of vegetation that did not exist before can be there, supporting bumblebees, etc. So this could be a program to have in mind if you're building and you don't want to if you want to make sure that your impact on nature is minimal. You can also get financial support for these actions. CEF, this is a event is very much connected to CEF, but it's still a PCI event. I can say that CEF is very much focused on physical equipment, while compared to Horizon, for example, it is more covering OpEx costs. So that I would say is the big difference. What they do have in common is that, in my opinion, these are the programs where the EU and the Commission has the most power to support DSOs compared to the other programs in the list. Then we have two special programs, the Modernization Fund and the Innovation Fund. These are not getting their budgets from the MFF, the traditional EU budget. They receive their budgets from the price of carbon. And when they were launched, they had initial budgets of, I believe it was 10 billion over 10 years. But since the price of carbon has gone up, I believe the budgets for these funds have increased with around 400%. The Innovation Fund, we have seen that the Innovation Fund can indeed support DSO projects. The problem for some DSOs that are not located in the right part of Europe to be supported is that this fund is supporting member states that have below 90% of the average GDP in Europe. So it is, let's say, automatically disqualifying a lot of member states and DSOs automatically. The Innovation Fund is, in theory, a program that could support DSOs, but in general, we have seen that it's difficult for DSOs to fit in this program. It is focusing very much on the reduction on CO2 emissions. It is focusing a lot on the opportunity costs. And I would say that many of our innovative solutions are often more or cheaper than the conventional solution. So it's difficult to justify that there is a gap compared to conventional solutions. And then we have the programs that are being distributed on the national level, the ERDF and the Cohesion Fund. We can take the next slide, please. This slide is trying to provide an overview of what kind of projects are suitable for which program. So the ones that are the most suitable for, let's say, early ideas and products that just not really are market ready are Horizon Europe and the Clean Energy Transition Partnership. While on the other side of the spectrum, we will have CEF Energy and the Modernization Fund. But what is interesting is that there is an overlap on this slide, meaning that projects that have been, let's say, an initial idea, they have been developed in the Horizon program, they can be financed, or no, they can support CEF projects. Take these products that need a bit of a support, they can be placed in the context of PCI, and there they can develop further. And this is what we in the community is trying to do as well. The Innovation Fund, it was actually set up just because of this, to take projects that or solutions that aren't really ready for market rollout and bridge the funding gap. Next slide, please. So this slide is presenting, I would say, the main programs that could be suitable. I will not repeat what they are intended for, but what I would like to show is more that the more you go towards the right in this image, the more of the decision power will be in the hands of the member states. So you will have Horizon and the Connecting Europe facility. They are being very much the European Commission involvement. Difference between the Connecting Europe facility and Horizon is perhaps that you will need the buy-in from the member states. So already there we see that you will need to have the national support. For the Innovation Fund and the Modernization Fund, it is a bit different. Modernization Fund, there the member states are collecting projects on a, let's say, a list, which are submitted to the Commission for approval. And for the Innovation Fund, it's similar, but the opposite, more or less. You apply to the Innovation Fund, but then you will have to have the member states approval. Going further to the right, we have the RRF, which is a huge program, but what we have seen in surveys and talking to colleagues in the community, that not all member states and DSOs were able to benefit from the RRF. Next slide, please. And then we have the programs that are furthest to the right. They're so far to the right, so they did not fit in the previous slide. And these are the programs that are under the umbrella of the Common Provisions Regulation. It's the ERDF as well as the Cohesion Fund. And just yesterday, I also heard a presentation from the Commission who has been looking into these specific funds and see how much DSOs are actually being supported. And I really appreciate that work by the Commission. It was really helpful. It was really interesting. And I also know because I have been trying to extract the data from the database where you have found the figures, and it was extremely difficult. So thanks a lot for doing that job for providing the information to us. So the EU budget for this MFF 21 until 27 is around 1.2 trillion euros. For these programs, they have around 270 billion. So quite a lot of funding is being distributed through these two funds, which are also relevant for DSOs. There are a huge number of projects. When I actually heard from the Commission spokesperson on regional development, and according to him, roughly 2 million projects had been supported under the Common Provisions Regulation. That sounds pretty insane. And let's say the energy-related projects that we looked into yesterday, presented by the Commission, they were around 50,000, if I remember correctly. And in these projects, I believe 270 or something like that involved DSOs. So there are some support that is being directed towards DSOs under the umbrella of the CPR. And the figure that the Commission presented yesterday indicated that it was around 4%. For energy-related projects, 4% has been going towards the DSOs. As an industry, we believe that perhaps that figure could be bumped up a bit. And that also relates to Action 10 in the Grid Action Plan, where the Commission now is trying to encourage member states to turn a bit in favor towards grids. Perhaps not always. It's a low-hanging fruit to introduce subsidies to have more PVs in the grid. But if we don't have enough capacity to connect the PVs, what's the purpose of that subsidy? So trying to have the member states getting a more holistic view of the system as well. Next slide, please. We have put some funding figures into blocks to illustrate the magnitude of the different programs. So we can see that the RRF has by far the largest budget. It does not only have grants in it, it also have a share of loans, more or less 50-50. What I understand, it was very easy to get rid of the grants part for the RRF, but a bit more difficult to get member states to take on new debt. And this also relates a bit to what Charles said. So for the RRF, we had member states that were the counterpart towards the European Commission. And then some member states did not include grids at all. And then perhaps specific, so that could be something to have in mind, that for future initiatives similar to this, that it should be mandatory for all member states to make sure that we are not over investing in generation and leaving the grids behind. Cohesion Fund, also huge budget. Here we have the real figures for the Modernization Fund and Innovation Fund. As said previously, they started off with a budget of 10 billion, which now has increased with 400%. There's a lot of potential there. A program we haven't mentioned yet is the Just Transition Fund. It can be quite interesting for DSOs. And as an example, could be that if we are in a member states that are going from, let's say, conventional generation from coal and gas, there is a possibility under the Just Transition Fund to, for example, set up a school to educate the ones that have been working in the coal mine to, for example, work with wind power or grids, for example. So if you have a shortage of labor in your member state and you need, let's say, installers, or this could be definitely be an option. And then we have the box, the blue box, SEF Energy. So it is quite small in relation to the other programs, and it's also important to mention that we should not expect that SEF Energy will be able to support all the investments of the grids, because the figure that we have seen recently from your electric study is that it is expected that grids will invest 67 billion per year until 2050. And then I'm going to finish my presentation with give a bit of an outlook. So currently we are looking in, I would say that EDSO, perhaps mainly currently, who is the association that is working perhaps more proactively on these topics, but also the DSO community in general is now trying to come up with ideas to the Commission while they are drafting the next EU budget. So what we have done until now, I would say some milestone is that we started the work with the next MFF already over a year ago. But what we did was the Commission indicated that they would publish the grid action plan. So what we basically did was that we took the early asks that we had, we tried to package them to be fit for the grid action plan as well. And that was published in a paper end of last year. That paper will now be reworked, taking the outcome of the gap into account with new recommendations for the MFF. Last week we had the paper that Charles just presented. It is not really focusing on funding programs. It is focusing on financing from a more holistic perspective. It is looking into all different ways grids can be, or DSOs can be financed. But still in this paper, we had to highlight that grants is very important for grids and will play an important role. So what we currently are aiming to do is that on Monday, actually, we in a cross-committee workshop at EDSO, we will present an idea of a new program which we call the Decentralized Grid Facility. The idea is to provide input to European Commission of what would the ideal funding program for DSOs look like. So this will be an early idea from EDSO, but we will make sure to align this idea with the other relevant associations, such as the DSO Entity, GEOD, SEDEC. Possibly also we go outside of the, I don't know, our peer associations and talk with Solar Power Europe, for example, because they are quite keen on getting their PVs connected to the grid. And then we hope to present the concept, the MFF position, Q4 2024, and also setting up an event for which we also would like to see the Commission attending. So the MFF is expected to be presented the 1st of July 2025. So more or less in exactly 1 year it will be presented. Then we will have the ping pong between the institutions, and hopefully we'll have an agreement by the end of 2027. That is my last slide. So I can finish my slide with asking Ricardo a question.
Yeah.
I think it's the other way around.
Yeah. But I mean, I saw you took interest in the timeline as well. So I just wanted to make sure that are we in time with the timeline, or will we be too late?
I think your timeline is correct on the negotiations on the adoption. So, of course, when it comes to MFF, what is important to note is that it's not the DGNR, but it's the finance, well, ministries on the finance side of the Commission who had the last word. So that is maybe just a note. But otherwise, it's in line with what we are aware as well.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's your turn to ask me a question.
Yeah, indeed. Many thanks, Richard. I think this really complemented the excellent introduction we had to the PCIs already to CEF, and you complemented it really with a holistic picture on all funding opportunities or possibilities that are currently out there, already also guiding us a bit towards which program we should go for, I don't know, software, hardware, OpEx, more physical connections. So I think this was extremely helpful. And we have here in the chat it's more a comment than a question. It comes from Richard, also another Richard. So we have, sorry, I'm always saying Richard in the German pronunciation, but I know there are many varieties. He's a member of our country expert group, and he's basically just commenting that certainly now when we see the carbon allowance price going a bit more down again, which will certainly have effects then, negative effects for the modernization fund. It's more a comment. I don't know if you share this expectation, or what do you think would it then mean for the fund?
I don't want to speculate in the price of carbon, but I mean, it is the size of the budget is volatile. I mean, that is what can be said. It started with 10 billion and now it's up on 40 billion. So the price of carbon will have to drop quite significantly in order to get down to the base scenario again.
Yeah. Okay, and then we have a very concrete question, namely, what are the expected financial needs of DSOs that are expected to be addressed for the MFF 2028 to 34 via the positioning? Is it realistic to achieve the figure?
I'm not sure which figure, but regarding the positioning, I would say, so what we would like to see is that a completely new program that is tailored for DSOs is being set up by the Commission, or proposed by the Commission.
Mm-hmm.
And we also understand, let's say, the difficulties with such a program, because such a program will be scrutinized when it comes to the other institutions.
Yeah.
That is also why we are that is also why we are working on this activity with developing this new program. We are not only taking, let's say, the concept, the application phase, but we are also looking into how can we actually finance this program, and how can this program be presented by the Commission in order to find acceptance by mainly the member states, I would say.
Good.
And then I would also say that if we don't see any kind of adjustment from towards under Action 10, that member states start supporting grids more than 4% of the total amount of energy projects, we would also like to see a revision of the Common Provisions Regulation, as well as the relevant sub-regulations to make sure that grids basically will have to be taken into account in order to remove any kind of congestion that is being created due to, let's say, suboptimal priorities on member state level.
Yeah. Okay, very good concrete proposals already. And just I think what you also summed it a bit up, and I think what we can really see from the grid action plan is that there is now lots of support also from the European Commission side towards DSOs, and what you were saying also, Richard, I think to also strengthen that member states see the need to invest more also in the DSOs when it comes to the funding. And very last question for you, maybe then, just when you, as I said, you've really already done a lot, I think, and the Commission is supporting us on different levels now. But when you hear these first ideas for having something specifically, potentially for DSOs, besides or next to the 10E, is this something you think could arise on the horizon, or do you not want to comment? So I give you the last word for this first panel.
Yeah, it's a bit tricky. I look forward to reading the paper, first of all, and then understanding better. Of course, I think there are many sectors, and not only in energy, but across the whole economy, that ask for ring-fence funding. So when you discuss with finance experts, not energy experts, of course, they hear that very often. So it's we understand very well, but of course, I think it's not for us to say. It's a bit tricky. It will be part of the MFFs, but it's not the easiest quest, I would say, personally, not speaking as a commission. So in line with what Ricardo explained before on the role of the commission, and then there are some programs that the commission is more involved. In that view, maybe it's good to stress the importance of CEF, where and PCIs, of course, where the commission indeed can maybe be part of the assessment and help certain projects if they make sense. So within the scope of maybe calling for the decentralized facility. So maybe in your future discussions, but of course for you to see what you want to advocate for.
Can I just comment to that a bit? And yeah, you're completely right. I mean, the self-energy really fills an important function. But I think could one say that the TENE regulation, which is stemming originally from 2013, it was originally created where there was a belief that the system would be more centralized than it actually turned out to be. The evolution of the system over the past decade has been very much decentralized, and the empowerment of customers. And when drafting the initial regulation, that could not really be seen. And that is perhaps why we see this kind of funding gap currently.
I would not necessarily agree with that. Let's not forget it was revised in 2 years ago, where we have been promoting for many years now flexibility, decentralized energy, and so on. So of course we are well aware of the developments of the system, and that reflects in all of the policy, but also legislative work we do. But also it's important to keep in mind if we talk about centralized funding programs like CEF or the PCI status before that, of course, that has we cannot have thousands of projects of DSOs covered by a central administration. I think that would not be effective, neither proportional. So there is a limit that needs to be a balance that needs to be done, and CEF focuses on that balance. PCI focuses on the balance. If it is for Europe, if it is trans-border, trans-European, then there is maybe a stronger role for the European Union or the European Commission as institution, but it cannot be that all of the distribution goes to European institutions' applications. That would be probably not very proportional or effective.
No, I fully sorry.
No, sorry. I just slowly have to close this discussion because we're already running a bit out of time. But I have a proposal because we would have a last speaker, Amy, in this section. But I would propose that we stick to the coffee break, that we have a coffee, and see us again in basically, let's say 15 minutes, like 10:40. Then we have Amy's presentation, and then we enter the workshop. I hope that's okay for Nina and Thomas, who already I see online. But since we didn't have so many questions before, I'm actually sure that we will still make it on time if we're now a bit delayed. And therefore, I'd propose we go for a coffee and see us back at 10:40, also with the online participants. Thanks a lot. I hope you supported it a bit longer than the
discussion.
Okay, yeah, also, but I hope it wasn't too, it's a workshop, but it wasn't too political. No, not the end. Okay.
Well, probably question word pick here.
No, but really, I think I attended 2 weeks ago, this Emma, and I thought, because you can really see how much you support this and having like half an afternoon telling them about DSOs, having more projects. I think this was.
We hope it makes a difference. At least now they know, they have heard, they know what a distribution grid is, your needs. You explain that very well. So, I mean, that's what we can do at the end. There needs to be national action.
But I think, there's these little parts that make the picture whole, it's really, I think all these steps are extremely supportive. And also what we could report yesterday too was we had Michaela also from in the task force Fin, and also there where she was mentioning again this TCI, for this technical.
Technical support instruments.
Yeah, exactly. And here I just wanted to ask, but so we can go, and you need another coffee? Still?
Yeah, I'll get another
Yeah.
one.
I know you by now, it's the coffee consumption.
Yeah, true.
Because she was also saying here, also we as DSO Entity could support
Yes.
in kind of getting in touch with them and also, asking, is there something for DSOs? If yes, what could we also tell with our members? And I was wondering how we could approach them. So if there is, if you have the contact from them or yes.
The managing authorities, so-
Basically from those authorities, yeah, the hiring also.
Yes, well, you can take a copy of them, but the guy that was sitting here.
Yeah, okay.
There are two PSIs. One is for the administrations and one is for the position operator.
Yeah.
So I think what you could certainly bring over that. They could apply on how to get technical support on how to apply. Issue for issue, that is for sure going right now because maybe they're not aware maybe of the processes or what they can do and the options. So that could be already something that can be done. I think the local application for this kind of support for both is until October. So it's now a good timing. And then on the mining authorities, it's a little bit trickier. I don't know if I can give you the contacts, but I can check with my colleagues who will. I think I don't know if we can use the contacts for the GDPR, but other than that, it would be good that it's not only a one-off event, which was very good, but even and then go on. Please reach out to that, maybe in the loop, and we'll see what happens. And also on the emergency center, very good for sure that would be. Yeah, I'll get one. Have a good break, guys. Have fun tonight.
That's clarifying you, not really, but yeah. Yeah, nice. Yeah, well, even I.
I hope that is fun.
Or maybe you have to put it here, there.
Okay.
I know. Ah. Do you know if the water is for only the participants?
No, go ahead. It's not only for the speaker.
Just the one here. Spaces that was given outside
There's
or it's
no, the code is there. The network is spaces.
yeah, this one, but it's taking time, it doesn't want to. Yeah, this is what I'm.
Takes a bit some time for us.
Oh, come on.
Okay. Yeah.
Good, so welcome back after the break. I see we have unfortunately lost some of the participants online, but some are still with us, actually quite a lot still. And I would say, first of all, a little apology for some of the online members, because I was told now that there were also raised hands. I did not see. My apologies really. And in the Q&A, we will still have a bit later. You can raise your hand again, and this time I'll definitely see it, and then we make sure you can have your question also answered. But for now, I would say I hand over to Amy, who is a funding expert in Vienna. So you're working for Wiener Stadtwerke, public utility of the city of Vienna, and you are dealing, you are actually a head of the funding department there, not only focusing on grids, but also on other energy and transport related aspects. And you will tell us a bit about also funding and the investors dialogue and how it looks there for grids.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the invitation today. Hello to those online. My name is Amy Radelberger. I am here representing Wiener Netze today, so Austria's largest combined network operator. I've been working on EU funding for over 20 years now. I'm not sure if that's a positive thing. My children say it's an extremely boring topic, but it's actually something I'm very passionate about. I actually 2 years ago to the day, I was my first investors dialogue for energy meeting, and I was very happy to be part of this. Next slide. The investors dialogue is a multi-level stakeholder dialogue, and we really get together to discuss different financing policies for energy projects and instruments, so all sorts of different types of financing that can support energy investments. We have 5 working groups and a steering committee. You can see them listed here. For this workshop, or for DSO Entity, DSO's Transmission and Distribution Working Group 2 is the most relevant. Fernando and Rodrigo and I are participating in this group, and there are very often lively discussions. I'm actually participating in every single working group, and often we have cross working group meetings because there are some issues, for example, CEF and PCIs, which are actually relevant to all of the different working groups. And I'll say a little bit more about that later on. So why was the investors dialogue put together? So the European Commission, DG Energy, wanted to gain more information on the investment support schemes, what's working, what's not working, what are the financial institutions thinking about, how do they develop products, etc. And the second, and we started actually with this second point, was identifying barriers to financing energy projects, both at the EU and member state level, and developing recommendations on how to address them. We don't only cover EU funding. We also look at national schemes and national financing products that can fund large-scale energy projects, with the hope of sharing this best practice across Europe. The task 3 is what we are actually currently working on. So we're identifying and analysing new and upgraded financing schemes, and we have produced a number of issue papers, reports and discussions. These are circulated internally at the Commission, but also there are a large number which have been published on the Investors Dialogue website. And as I mentioned, we are developing guidance and best practices to support and help streamline financing in the different segments of the energy value chain. Next slide, please. What makes us really unique, I think, as a stakeholder group is the involvement of private financial institutions. So the banks are sitting around the table, investors, venture capital organizations. Then you have the European financial institutions, so EIB, European Bank of Reconstruction and Development, and the national promotional banks are also there. We have think tanks, academia, NGOs. We have also a lot of European organizations and some utilities, but not many of us. And but yeah, we're all working together, and it has been absolutely fascinating for me personally, and I think for all the stakeholders to get into the mindset of each of us, and therefore I fully believe that our publications are extremely worthwhile because they've been discussed and thought through by lots of different stakeholders. The next slide, please. As I already mentioned, we have published a lot of different publications, either reports or meeting kind of minutes, where you can have a look at the ideas on how the energy project should be financed. So we have financial instruments and models for transmission and distribution. This was published a while ago, and you can also see some of our reports from Working Group 2, which will be of interest to you. And we have some other reports which I've listed here that you can also have a look at, and they're all publicly available. We have a monthly newsletter, so I would very much recommend that you subscribe to these, and we have annual plenary meetings in January in Brussels and webinars. Next slide, please. And again. So as I already said, we started working on CEF and PCIs quite early on in the Investors Dialogue process because we deemed it to be so critical, a critical element of our work and something that needed discussion. We had in March, we had a meeting with the European Commission to discuss CEF, and project promoters presented their projects, and it was extremely lively discussions, and we had very open discussions on CEF and PCIs. Some of the findings I've actually listed here, but also we discussed it also in our working groups, and there has been a meeting report that is publicly available. So some of the findings that we have made following this event and also following our working group discussions. Obviously, it's been said already today that PCIs and also PMIs, don't forget, are essential for market integration and diversifying energy sources and integration of renewable energy. So that was very much the consensus of our working groups and our meeting on CEF Energy. Not only that, but CEF as a funding scheme is crucial in supporting cross-border energy structures. So there was a clear validation of the CEF funding scheme or the CEF program, CEF Energy program. But what was really interesting is that we looked at a number of examples of PCI projects being funded by not only by CEF. So actually, some projects have good examples of seeing the project as a whole and being funded not only by CEF, but loans and guarantees and equity, for example, over the European Investment Fund. So it very much aligns with what Ricardo says and also Richard. that PCI status, and that's what we saw, people treating it as a status and using different financial forms then to actually get this project funded and implemented. Already mentioned today, so I'm glad that our conclusions were also in line what others feel and have seen, that the PCI labeling and CEF financing are of extreme value for the projects, both at European level and at project level. So through having this PCI status, project promoters can already show lenders the economic viability of the projects. There were just a couple of negative findings that we had. I don't think they're just relevant for CEF or for the whole PCI process, but you hear it very often when regards to funding. Burdensome applications and evaluation processes. So it is still the case that people link CEF Energy and PCIs together and are very disappointed that having a PCI status does not automatically qualify you for funding. And so therefore to go through the PCI process and then not to get funding is, people see that as very burdensome and evaluation and not necessary and too much work then to go through. But as we've heard today, we need to ensure that's separated. So getting the PCI status and then going on to receive funding. And like I've said, we have examples of not only CEF Energy funding. Although the PCI process gives you this advantage of permitting and in terms of regulatory procedures, some of the project promoters were still saying that they're still hindered by permitting, the tendering processes, which can be quite long, and also technological problems. So sometimes they've had to recite the facility. And the CEF program in itself needs to be financially flexible. So for those projects that started, for example, 2018, 2019, then were hit by the crisis, they had incredible cost increases, but they could not cover those by the program because it wasn't allowed. And obviously, there are other issues such as the delays in getting parts or in just basically delivery times extremely long, which also impacted on the projects. Next slide, please. So we also came up with some recommendations for the CEF Energy program in itself. I'm going to start with the last program, but the last point actually, because I think this is extremely crucial, and I think it's something that lots of people aren't really aware of, is that in comparison with the investment needs, the CEF Energy program has a relatively low budget. I think it's about 6 billion. So there was overwhelming support for CEF Energy and overwhelming support to get this budget actually increased. One other thing that we'd like to call for, and it links a little bit to my question earlier, is I think there's a need really to have a look, kind of a holistic look at all funding programs or financial programs, financial products, to see if there's duplication, and see where the gaps are, and try to cover the whole energy value chain. But I think we need to take a step back because we know that the EU budget post 2027 will be less. So it's even more crucial that we delineate the programs and make sure that everything that DSOs need to be financed is by different programs, and make sure that programs are not financing the same thing. We've already started today, but raising awareness about CEF funding opportunities and some of the points that we've heard today, which were also new to me, is going to be crucial for maximizing the uptake. So I set a challenge for you all in the room and online to be kind of stewards of the CEF program and tell others about what you've learned today. This is extremely, extremely important. Particularly, I know that every day I face a rumor that somebody's heard, and I have to say, yes, that's true, or no, that's not true. So word of mouth is extremely important. So please do talk to your colleagues across Europe and tell them about PCI, CEF Energy, the benefits, and talk to funded projects. We also discussed blending mechanisms. That's already heard today, but that's where public grants and financial and private financing are offered together. This could be important where the CEF energy budget might be lower or not meeting our needs next time around. Obviously, blending is, as we've said, extremely complicated. Some organizations or businesses are able to have private finance, some not, but it just could be a good possibility then to maximize the funding actually that we actually have. Next slide, please. So thank you very much. If you want to be part of, if you want to follow the work, then I've included the links to the Investors Dialogue, and I'm fairly active on LinkedIn, posting about our work, also in TFIN, which I would just like to say is an extremely important working group, and I want to thank my colleagues already for being so motivated. The discussions that we have in the task force are so interesting, and I'm part of the funding work. So you can expect good things from our task force, I think, and we'll be coming back to you all for feedback on some of the European funding programs. So you'll expect some communication from us. Yeah, and please do not hesitate to contact me if you need any information, or if you have views on EU funding programs. I'm happy to discuss them here. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Amy. And I think it was it is a perfect transition to our next intervention, because you were speaking of stewards of PCI or CEF. And I'm really delighted that today we are having also Nina and Thomas with us, who are the project managers, so those in charge of the Gabretta project, which is one that has already been honored or celebrated last week during the Copenhagen Infrastructure Forum. So I think it is really a project not only the project organizers, but the whole sector can be proud of. And therefore, I would welcome you, Nina, and also Thomas, if you can also put on your camera that we can also see you. And I would give you the floor to please introduce us to the project and help us to learn a bit how can we and other DSO apply for a PCI and potentially then later even for a CEF funding.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you very much, DSO Entity, for this invitation and the opportunity to share our experience as a CEF-funded PCI project. First, we would like to introduce ourselves briefly. So go to the next slide, please. My name is Nia Sichler. I'm working for Bayernwerk, and I'm the project manager for the German, let's say Bavarian side of the project, and my colleague Tomasz Manosoglu working for EGD and project manager for the Czech side. And yeah, we will share today a little bit of our experience with you. But before we get into the content, we would like to show or start with a short video. Let's say to get you into the mood. So let's see if it works with playing the video.
Yeah, we're working on it. Yeah, we're struggling with the audio. There are subtitles, but I think they're in German.
Yeah. So if it's not working, we can skip it, not to waste too much time. So
It's working there and I don't know.
Okay, I don't know, how long is it? Otherwise, we could just, sometimes a picture says more than 1,000 words. And I think, yeah, we see already some grids and some renewables, and it's maybe good to just get the idea of it. And I see
exactly. So yeah, maybe we can have a look at it afterwards, or we will share it with you. But basically, this was more to get you into the mood regarding our project Gabretta, which is the Celtic name, the Celtic expression for the Bavarian and Bohemian forest. And I think here you can see really nice pictures of the forest, which is really not just a cultural and environmental space. So this is really a strong symbol also for our strong relationship between our countries. So this was the idea to start the presentation. So maybe let's get back to the presentation, to the slides. And so to slide 4. Just wait a second. Yes. And here you can probably see the greatest moment so far. So the celebration to mark the project launch, we got 100 million CEF funding, which is a lot. And so for us, for sure, it's a great success. And this was a great moment to celebrate this. But now you're probably wondering how we did it. So if you go to the next slide, that was, the question, how did we get there? And I can tell you, it's been definitely a wild ride. So let's take a look at our Gabretta journey together.
Thanks for introduction. I will take word since this slide. Sorry for not having on my camera, but I'm glad that I started this Zoom meeting on my computer, honestly. So sorry for that, but already a success. I can talk to you and hear you. Can you just move forward probably in the timeline? So we started in 2020 with the idea about preparing the Gabretta project. So it's since now more than 3 years, let's say 4 years, we are continuously working on the project. So maybe one quite important takeaway is that it takes such a time to succeed and get on board with such an interesting project. So 2020 we started with the thinking about defining the project, getting the right partner, getting the right idea and the scope, and we continue it up to the 2024. Can you please continue until the end of the timeline? There's April 24, one more. Yeah, that's it. So it took us quite a lot of steps. Maybe I would highlight. So the first important was to get the PCI status. We were waiting to get on the 5th list. And then we started the preparation of the CEF application. Unfortunately, with our first CEF application, we haven't succeeded as all the other purely DSO projects at the time. So we decided to go for the second round, and I will get to that. But the most important part is if you want to start with a PCI and potentially also CEF project, it takes some time. So the first takeaway, and the second, you need a partner who will be willing to intensively cooperate with you for 4 years about just one project, which is kind of not usual stuff to just start the implementation. And can you please go to the next slide? As I said, we prepared the PCI project. So the first step, the 5th PCI list, then we applied for CEF funding, and we haven't succeeded. And for us, it was quite a crucial moment, because after 2.5 years of quite intensive work, also during COVID, so everything was even much more complicated because we were able to meet, everything needed to be solved online. We were used to that, so definitely you imagine that time. So we were thinking if we should continue, not with the PCI, but to reply for the CEF. And after quite a long time, we decided to go for the second shot. So But we knew that if we go the same way, we probably will not succeed again, speaking about the staff. But we said, okay, let's go for the 6 PCI list and let's try another shot for the CEF funding. So we're definitely sure that we want to keep our project on the PCI list. So that's why we reapplied after 2 years with a government in pretty the same scope. And we also decided to go for the second round. Can you go to the next slide? What were the biggest challenges on the way for the second attempt? Honestly, 4 years. So if we started in 2020, you can imagine that plenty of people have changed. It's also pretty new, let's say this way. Not as pretty new, but she wasn't there from the start. I think I'm the only one, and Petra, right, from the team of EGD, who started in the project and is still there. So it's quite hard to, have some fluctuation in your team if you are still working on the same project. Also, with the second CEF fund, imagine we were 3 years working on something and we needed to redefine in quite short-term notice. So it was quite also tough. You also need to motivate again the people working on the project. Also, you can imagine that after we haven't succeeded, to motivate people in your team to give even more than before and even shorter time for the second shot, it was maybe the biggest challenge we had. We also need some kind of external support for quite tricky calculations of the financial and financial modeling and KPIs. I will get to that. And yeah, honestly, the new strategy for the second CEF application was also needed because we knew that if we do it in the same way as copy paste, it won't be there. So we totally redefined not the scope, it was the same as it has to be the same as it was because it was the same PCI list. But we needed to define the new, let's say, argumentation. I don't want to say the story. The story is pretty the same. It was more about the argumentation. I call it what, where, why, to be able to describe what we do, where we do, why we do that, and what will be the advantage from the perspective of European customers, and not only in Czechia and Germany, but let's say what's the the European perspective of the project, and literally to be able, as we call it in the team, try to explain to your mother what you do, why you do, and how it will help it in her daily, not business, because my mother is in pension, so in her daily life, let's say this way. Okay, let's go for the next slide. So that was our new approach, and we needed to come up with a new teamwork strategy. So if we go in a little bit more detail, we set up a new team. So we wanted to get a fresh perspective on let's say the same issues, and with the same people, it's quite hard to have a look on the same challenges with the same eyes we were looking for almost 3 years. So we get on board the new people who will come up with, let's say, some fresh idea, but also we needed to get it quite in short notice, as it was 4 months. I always say that it was the worst summer of my life, working from Monday to Sunday each week without a vacation, but it was worth it. We also had a look on the CapEx review and investment review. And in the PCI, the Gabretta is much more bigger because we need to get a full impact. So we have quite a broad range of investment, but we knew that, let's say for the CEF, we need to pick the most relevant amount and to just focus to get not the right argumentation, but deliverables needed to approve the need of an urgency and priority for EU funding. So we also took the big package we had in the project and tried to find the right ratio for the CEF application with a argumentation. Also, you all know that currently everyone is talking about digitization. That's quite a buzzword, I think, usually nowadays. But we wanted to take it seriously. This is why I'm talking about smart grids. So it's not about the physical investment we put in the grids, like the smart assets and so on, but we really focused also on, let's say, non-physical assets. So it means our IT solutions and also our common IT solutions. We will get to that later on. So, but I wanted to highlight that also, as we were trying to select, the best investments for the project, the same we did with the digitalization, and really trying to find the arguments and cross links between the investments to get really unite. I don't like to say story, but really united project. Also, let's say business model or cost benefit analysis or KPIs. You all know that it's necessary to calculate it for PCIs. The same is needed for self-funded projects, but we want to do it. We knew the way. I think we knew it way before, but we wanted to have it even better calculated and described. So we invested even much more energy to come up with a fresh new business model with a really strong argumentation, cross links to the studies and internal documents and analyses. And this was, I believe, like 60% of our success, to have a really strong calculations within which you go through and you see a solid case. So we created through the business model, I don't know, it was roughly 60 pages of description, argumentation, why we use this number, why this outcome is that, how it will help, what will be the deliverable. And we really tried to do it bulletproof. So if you read our business case, we'll go through the calculation models, I believe you get a solid case and solid piece of work. So this was quite interesting and also important for us. Realism, the argumentation, also as I said, what are the benefits for the customers? As all of us in the business are, or DSO business, I would say this way, we're quite in the topic, really deeply involved. We sometimes forget to describe why specifically this and this will help to our customers. I'm pretty sure all the companies are really customer orientated. We do it for our customers, for Europeans. We know why we do it. We know why we need this and that kind of technology, but sometimes we really forget, to describe why we need it, because we know it, as in your daily life, you know that you need to breathe and you need to eat and drink, and when you meet someone, you don't explain them why you need it, because you know that you need it. And we unfortunately a little bit forget to do it in the last self application, the same with the PCI. So this was, the one also the most important takeaways. I printed out, put it in my wall, and every day I came to office, I saw it. You have to describe why we specifically need this and that in your project, and what will be the specific outcome. Luckily, COVID was quite not the issue anymore, just a little, I would say. So we were also able to, do kind of workshops during the preparation. And honestly, COVID learned us that not everything is needed to be done on site, but we also learned that not everything can be done online. So I believe that quite a huge disadvantage during the 5th PCI list preparation, 6th PCI list preparation, first step application was that we literally were able to meet just, 2-3 times in 3 years, as everything, was forbidden. We had a really strong internal rules about traveling. So we tried to manage everything online, which was possible to do that. But honestly, my personal takeaway is also that this is not the way how it should be done or effectively be done. So we even now try to do some compromise and combine the physical and non-physical meetings. And also I can strongly recommend you, 1-day workshop with the technical people, writing on the table, doing pictures about what we need, why we need it, it's worth than, 10 online meetings. We don't have to meet for every nonsense, but sometimes it's quite helpful. Yeah, can we go for the next slides? It will be, let's say, some kind of summary, what we have learned during not just CEF preparation, but also the PCI application preparation. And it's, few, let's say, the most important bullet points. So use of official template, it's highly recommended, and non-mandatory means mandatory, in quotes, let's say it, in quotes. What we thought that we know it better in some cases, so we come up with, let's say, with our own solutions, because we thought that the European Commission templates doesn't fit so well to our case, so we come up with something new. Honestly, thinking about that from current perspective, it wasn't the best idea. So let's try to stick what's recommended. That's my biggest takeaway from the 3 years journey. You all know that we are quite struggling with differences between DSOs and TSOs. It's never-ending story. And these differences, connected to the 10E regulation and the templates and everything. And sometimes, and it's, it's pretty clear why. Sometimes it doesn't fit to one and each other. So when you have one huge TSO line, super important, I don't want to argue about that. So you need some kind of calculations, benefits, KPIs, whatever. But we have like thousands and thousands of investments, and it's pretty harsh sometimes to fit in one template, to have one solution fit to all. But that's, as I said, never-ending discussion. But takeaway: use what's on the table, try to fit in, come up with the argumentation, use business case to describe how you fit it in there and what were the outcomes. Don't try to be too technical. Let's try to be easy readable and understandable. We really don't want to underestimate anyone who is afterwards re-evaluating our projects and applications. Definitely not. But as the applications and everything are quite complex, sometimes even us, get too much in it, and it was too complicated, too much cross information. I don't know what. So we say, hey, let's do it. As I said, try to describe it to your mother, and not to be too technical or super complicated. I hope Nina is not listening, but sometimes it's even hard if you do a project with Germans who have to calculate it super exactly and describe it super exactly, but then you don't fit in the templates. That's the first point number one. You have 100, I don't know how many pages for application, the same for the PCI. And if you go really in the detail, you will never fit in that, and no one wants to read like 500 pages about primary and secondary substations. So what we also printed out and put it on the table, let's describe it like you are describing it to your mother. I don't want to offend everyone. It should just be the nice slogan for the preparation. What's also one of the most important parts was the support we were able to get. I always, when I'm talking about the project and our success, I always try not to forget to thank everyone, not just to the European Commission who decided to support our project with the CEF funding, who also decided to put us on the PCI list. That's great for us. But we also never have to forget to also thank to all the supported parts, ministries, NGOs, and everyone who was I don't want to list everyone, as it will be quite a long list, and also I would probably forget on someone. So generally, thanks to all. And the takeaway, really try to get the support for your project, the argumentation, and also to get, let's say, the third part approval that what you describe in your applications, PCI and SAF, that's really the true, and even someone else see it as you do. For instance, from my perspective, it was also great that we get the national from NRA, the supporting list, with the description that what we do is really helpful from the customer benefits, and also that it will positively influence, let's say, the customer's fees and everything. The same for the ministries and the other. Yeah, this is also one of the most important part. And don't take it as a mandatory, because there is some mandatory annex with the national ministry support. But for me, it's not mandatory. It's not mandatory that you need to get a signature, whatever. But really, to get the support is, I believe, one of the points which can help you to win the sprint. Don't do it in the last minute. Maybe it sounds silly, to just highlight such, I would say, easy thing. Don't work on the last moment. But my takeaway, maybe lessons learned, we had a cost benefit analysis, or the business model. One Excel spreadsheet, which in the end had like 6 or 7 megabytes. I don't remember, the Excel document, and the limit in the information system was, I don't know, 1 megabyte. So we struggled like 1.5 day. Where is the issue in the document to transform it in something which we were able to forward to the system? The same with that we needed to fit it in 1 PDF, not 20, and it took us like, I don't know, week to solve all these kind of issues we never thought we will have. So my personal recommendation: don't think you can submit it in the last day, because there will be some surprises you didn't thought you will have. Okay, so this was the procedure, how we get there. And I would like to hand over back to Nina, because honestly, we didn't tell you what the project is about. So let's go ahead in this kind of topic.
Exactly. Thank you, Tomasz. So finally, some general information about our project. You can also find this information on our website, which is currently being revised. So top right, you will find the link. And so to sum it up, we can say Gabretta Smart Grids is about the acceleration of the digitization of our distribution grids, and a really, really strong fostering cross-border cooperation between the project partners and also other DSOs. So project promoters, I think that was already pretty clear, is Bayernwerk and EGD. We are both E.ON in the E.ON group, so 100% E.ON sister companies, and we are supported by our TSOs, TenneT and CHAPS. And yeah, the whole investments are concentrated on the Czech border region. So we have a high focus on that region, but other investments are really in the whole distribution areas of Bayernwerk and EGD. But this was also maybe one of the main changes or adjustments in the second try that we really decided to have a more stronger border focus. So realization period, we started the project implementation. Start was in April this year, and the project will end in 28. So yeah, the next 5 years. And the budget is about 200 million euros, with a split of 110 million for Bayernwerk and 90 million for EGD, with a funding rate of 50%. And yeah, maybe also to mention that for Germany, this is the really first time or first large-scale infrastructure PCI project for the DSO grid. So for us, it's really something totally new, and we're really happy to implement this project now together with our partner. So let's move to the next slide. I think we're a little bit running out of time, and most of the information has already been mentioned and covered. So we talked already about why we chose the name Gabretta. What does it mean? It's really a strong symbol for our cooperation, and also the cultural and environmental connection we have together. And I think one of the most important arguments for our project is that we are in accordance with overall EU energy and climate strategy. So our project will help to digitize our grids, to observe them better, to control them better, to steer them better, and basically, or in the end, to integrate more renewables. Okay, so now finally I'll look at the specific and probably more interesting investments, because it's about the common investments. So please go to the next slide. Yeah, so here you can see we have 5 work packages, but we really just picked the most interesting investments to show you what we are planning to build until end of implementation. So here you can see the work package for the interconnection and strengthening of our distribution grids. So this is probably the most, the most, let's say, sexy investment in our project. It's the interconnectors, because we will, the very first time, connect our grids together. Where our distribution areas meet, there is no connection, neither at the TSO level. So we will, for the first time, it's really historically that we will connect our grids. So there will be 3 connections at the medium voltage level, and we also have to switch from 22 kV to 20 kV. This will be quite interesting to solve this problem, but yeah, we will solve it within the next years. And also within this project, we will build 4 totally new primary substations, 2 on the Czech side and 2 on the German side. And they also have a strong border focus, so they're quite close to the border. And you can see also here the investment, so roughly 20 million on the Czech side and 21 on the German side. Okay, let's please skip to the next slide. Yeah, so this is, I say, like, the interconnectors are probably the most sexy investment, but I think also IT solutions is quite sexy, because it's all about digitization, and so we have a really strong focus on IT solutions. You can see that EGD is investing a lot. They are planning to have SCADA, head-end system, data hub, storage warehouse. But on the German side, we will develop grid management and optimization tools for better grid steering and planning. And maybe what I would like to mention is we have a really nice common investment. It's about an energy mix forecast tool, and also an application for energy mix and forecast. So this is designed for the customer, and it will help the people to better plan their energy consumption. Then they know, okay, when there is a good time to switch my household devices on or off. So they will have a forecast and know how many renewables are currently in the grid. So they can really have an active role in the energy transition, and it will also develop the awareness and foster the awareness of the customers. So this is a really nice app we will develop together. And yeah, we're really proud and happy about it. And I think this is it regarding our presentation. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks a lot to you for not only a very good introduction what the project is about, but also how you made it work to get the PCI status and then the CEF funding. And as you already mentioned, unfortunately, we're running a bit out of time, but nevertheless, I'm looking into the room, but also at hands or the chat and the Q&A, if something is coming. While I'm looking and waiting, maybe just one question from my side, because I think we've heard very nicely from Thomas, yes, how much energy and motivation and good teamwork is needed to make it through a CEF. And therefore my question would actually be, why did you choose also for financing the CEF? And now seeing that you had to apply twice to make it work, would you consider, or in hindsight, another funding instrument potentially? If one of you wants to respond.
You know, in EGD, we had a really great experience with the CEF from ACUM project, where we get quite a lot of experiences about the preparation and realization of PCI and also CEF. And we saw there a really good potential how to get into the grids the asset we need in much shorter time that it would usually take. So that's why we kind of, I don't want to say insist, but that's why we imply, because we knew that this instrument works. It's really helpful for us as DSOs. And that's why we applied for the second time. You know, we had a strong motivation to get in the club of CEF-funded projects, because from the PCI and the CEF, there is not only a financial benefit and but there are other, as I always say, soft benefits to be able to communicate with the European Commission, get good contacts, the same on the national level with the customers. So for us as EGD, and I believe the same as I felt it in Bamberg, this was one of the top priorities to succeed and to have the fully major project on the PCI and also CEF to develop the other externalities you get with the CEF and PCI.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we were so harsh and insisting on getting there.
Yeah, and it worked out. So very well done.
Thanks. And other funding, it's probably not the case in Germany. And in Czech Republic, we have other possibilities to co-finance, but the Gabretta is really one package we wanted to develop and one meaningful package for our both companies. So we never thought about anything else for those investments, and this package we developed together.
Okay, perfect. Then I would say, if I don't see any further questions, I would have several, but as we said, unfortunately, time is slowly coming to an end. If it is okay, though, for Nina and Thomas, if there are some questions coming later, or if there are some DSOs that have the intention to apply and thought it would be a good idea to maybe have a little chat with you, would it be okay then also to share your contact details with
definitely. That's why we included here our emails. We are more than happy to try to help the others to get on the same successful way as we are. So don't hesitate to contact me or the same regard our colleagues in Brussels. We're definitely there to support you.
Perfect. But for now, already many thanks, because I think what I at least took from so many lessons you had learned is really that you need a good team, you need a good timing, you need practical support and political support. You need to have a solid business case. And I think the third thing I will also remember, you need to have a good storyline and you need to be able to explain it to your mother or grandmother. And I think with these three maybe little core takeaways, we are already well equipped to potentially get something started. But then I would say we close our workshop for today. It was a pleasure that you were here online and also in person. Thanks a lot for the interest. And we really hope that in the future, we might see some more smart grid PCIs out there, but certainly also we hope, I think that the decentralized funding facility might become a reality. But in general, I think what we could also see from European Commission being present today, that there is much greater interest also at the European level now to support DSOs, be it via European funding programs, but also pushing the member states a bit to direct the funding of the nationally distributed funds a bit more towards DSOs. So I would like to end with this positive outlook, and certainly from Task Force Fin and the work they're doing, I'm sure there will be much more in the future about funding to learn about, to exchange about, and therefore I hope to see you soon again when we have another exchange on this topic. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye online.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.